Hi, and welcome to another in our little series of videos about modulation. So what is modulation? It's when we move from one key to another key. So if you're playing a fairly short piece, you might be happy to stay in one key and it might survive quite happily. As soon as you play something that's a little bit longer, if you just stick in one key, it starts to sound a bit boring after a while. So you have to do something like shift to another key, maybe come back home again later in the piece, and you get this bit of musical variety through moving around keys. When we first used major and minor keys in the Baroque period, well, composers would work from one key to a neighbouring key. What do I mean by that? You're in C major, you add one sharp, so you go into G major. Or you're in C major, you add one flat, so you go into F major. Or you're in C major and you think, well, let's vary the tonality by going to the relative minor, A minor. So you see they were quite into modulating to closely related keys. In other words, keys nearby on the circle of fifths. And if they went further, which sometimes they did in more extended pieces, well, they'd probably go through intervening keys on their way to where they were travelling. As time and a half goes by, composers want to be a bit more adventurous. So they start using these things called chromatic chords, and they start being a little bit more dramatic. By the time we get to the 19th century, where music's all about emotion and passion and expressing your feelings and all the rest of it, we want to be using a broader kind of more dramatic range of chords, and we want to be able to modulate in more exciting ways. And if you're improvising or if you're composing, well, you might be used to doing a bit of modulation or not, but you might be doing some modulation and thinking, well, I always kind of do the same things. Have a little think about using these chromatic chords. So here's another in our series of how to modulate using these chromatic chords. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the Neapolitan chord. Well, what is the Neapolitan chord? Nothing to do with ice cream for a start. But the Neapolitan chord is based on chord 2. So believe it or not, I'm in the key of C major, and you're already looking at this board saying, well, come on, you can't be in C major, but if you've got D flat and A flat, they've got nothing to do with C major. And you'd be absolutely right to say that. But this is a Neapolitan chord in the key of C major. How do we get there? We start by thinking, what's the second degree of the scale, or what we call the supertonic? So the second degree of the scale in C major is D. Okay, well, what happens if we then form a chord on D? We get D, F, A, don't we? All we need to do is lower the root and the fifth. So instead of D, F, A, we get D flat, F, A flat. It would be the same chord in C minor, except in C minor, the A would already be flat, so you just have to flatten that D at the bottom. So that's how you construct your Neapolitan chord. Or you could just say, well, what's the lowered supertonic, the lowered second degree of the scale? That's D flat. Can I build a major chord on D flat? Yes, here it is. What you're then going to do normally is to put it in first inversion. Simply means that the F is going to come at the bottom of it. Doesn't have to be in first inversion, but quite often it is. So I'm tiddling along in C major, minding my own business. Sounds all right, doesn't it? But after a while, this is going to get a little bit boring, you know. So what am I going to do? I might decide to use a Neapolitan chord. Oh, isn't it nice? A lot of colour there. And 1 C to 5, 7 to 1 might be a nice way of resolving it. The Neapolitan goes to 1 C, or it goes to 5. And on from there. So it's a nice bit of colour in C major. However, what happens if I'm thinking, well, you know what I really want to do? I'm in C major and I want to go to D flat major. And I look at the circle of fifths and I think, a bit tricky this. C major's up the top there, no flats, no sharps. But D flat major is all the way down here. It's got 5 flats. So how am I going to get there? Do I have to go through F major, B flat major, E flat major, A flat major before I get to D flat major? Well, you could do. You should get there somewhere before Christmas. But if you want to get straight to D flat major, one way of doing it would be to use a Neapolitan. So here I am, minding my own business in C major. I've used the Neapolitan chord in C major and then carried on C major, but I might get to the point where I use the Neapolitan and then I carry on in D flat major. Do you see, that was pretty seamless, wasn't it? And now I'm in the key of D flat major. So I've managed to make that hop from C major with no sharps, no flats to D flat major with 5 flats simply by using the Neapolitan as a means of modulating to that key. So there we are, something you might want to play with in your own improvisation and in your own composition. So have fun, see if you can modulate in a slightly more adventurous way.